Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. In the world of firearms, there are a few outfits that do what I guess would come originally from Savile Row in London, where you get your bespoke suit made, custom made for you. And then, of course, you have the Purdy's in the double-barrel shotgun world. There are a number of companies that make bespoke shotguns. Well, that has not really been the case in the world of mass-produced handguns, except there's a guy who's just nutty enough to think somebody could pull that off. Jason Burton joins us right now. Heirloom Precision. Jason, welcome. How are you, sir?
Good. How about yourself? Thanks for having me on.
Good. And I think nutty is about the right word. The idea that somebody would say, well, yeah, I can make a bespoke 1911 pistol. Where did that idea come from?
I think the genesis of the idea really comes from maybe the 50s and the 60s when, especially when the Southwest Combat Pistol League started, with Cooper and all those guys, really kind of starting the first competitive arena for firearms. And, of course, many of them were big advocates of the 1911. And at the time, there was basically Colt, and that was it, right? So you'd buy a Colt, and then you'd figure out, I can't see the sights that well, or they're not as usable as I'd like them to be, or the safety's not quite as usable, and I need a little bit more traction on the gun, or I'd like the gun to be more accurate or reliable. And sort of a cottage industry popped up of guys who were tuning the guns.
Right.
And, guys like Armin Swenson and Jim Hogue and King's Gun Works and Packmeyer, big shop.
Packmeyer was the big shop, and everybody, and you would have your 1911, you'd buy it, and then you say, and I know I got to spend another $500. This is back in 1980s dollars to send it to somebody and get it made right, which would be, I don't know, several $1,000s today.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it all began there with guys tuning the guns up. And then as tuning the guns for a specific purpose, right? The purpose being IPSC or personal defense. Tuning the guns turned into an industry unto itself, right? So now you have, and we're really fast forwarding years here at this point, right? But you've got guys starting to develop aftermarket parts, and then shops like Wilson Combat are born, right? Bill Wilson at Wilson Combat, and same thing with like Ed Brown. And not only did they develop
an entire catalog, my whole Brownell's catalog on 1911 parts.
That's right. And I think that as those guys began to develop more and more parts, they also realized that they could streamline their business practices and produce more and better guns by then building guns on their own frames and slides. And so the industry transitioned a little bit in the sense that instead of buying a Colt, you now could buy a gun that was, for all intents and purposes, off the shelf, that had the features that many guys would have been paid to do back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And as it relates to me, I still sort of hold true to the idea of starting with a Colt and using that as a base platform that I can then customize to the client specifications and do it sort of the old school way. If we say that the way they were doing it in the 50s and 60s is the old school way, I still adhere to that, except the guns have benefited, my guns have benefited from the technological innovations and the parts innovations that guys like Bill Wilson and Ed Brown, and there's many, many others that have contributed. But
you don't have to make a beaver tail out of scratch. You can actually buy good parts now.
That's right. Yeah, and there are so many good parts to be had now. I started doing this professionally 17 years ago, so this has been my full-time, this is all I do job for 17 years. But even in the late 90s,
making 1911s, making 1911s.
Yep.
Wow.
17 years now. And so, in the late 90s when I got into it, even then, you'd see the litany of parts that was available. And even from that point going forward, the technological leaps in terms of machinery and mass fabrication and manufacturing has made it really great for the 1911 buyer. And it's the reason why I think that a guy like me can exist, because you can go to a gun store and buy a Nighthawk or a Wilson or a Les Baer or an Ed Brown or a Kimber or a Springfield, and valued on those dollars, those are all really good guns. I kind of operate in the realm of when a guy wants something truly unique built for himself, kind of in the same way that there are still custom motorcycle and custom car builders.
Right.
I'm kind of in that idea.
Oh, okay, let's give people an idea, because, I mean, if you go out and buy one of the nice Wilson, Les Baer, Ed Brown, you're in the $2,800 to $3,500 range. Does that sound about right?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
And maybe, depending on what guns, I think Wilson's got a gun that's as much as $8,000 now or something like that.
Okay. So what does a Jason Burton Heirloom Precision, I'm going to have a gun made to my specs, and I know it sounds more like a sentence from the court. It's a dollars and years deal at this point. So what are we looking at?
Yeah. In terms of, so everything is just, for me, an equation of time, right? Like, because every client wants something a little bit different, and every base gun I build on, even if you've got two consecutively serial numbered Colts sitting in front of me, they're going to be dimensionally within their spec, but different from each other. So for me, everything is just an equation of dollars per hour. But a gun from me, depending on how a client may want it set up, could be anywhere from 12 to 16, 17, 18,000.
Okay, for a 1911. So what's the difference? I mean, people are now just swooning. They're going, you got to be, and also that it's also a matter of time, because that's going to take some time, because there's just you making these guns one at a time. What's the difference? And people want to know, between spending $3,500 and get you a really nice Wilson Combat and paying $12,000 for a Jason Burton. What more do you get for that?
So the biggest difference, I would say, is the overall client experience and the availability of options. And what I mean is, thumb safeties as an example. Everyone makes a thumb safety now, okay? And different clients like a different thumb safety. So it's really hard to to call up a semi-custom shop and say, hey, I want this gun from your catalog, but I want you to use this competing brand safety or sight. Oftentimes they don't want to do that. But it's also a stylistic thing. I think a lot of times what people are coming to me for is a style that is not a catalog item. A classically styled 1911 that is unique in that it is built specifically for the client. And the other half of that coin is I'm a perfectionist, and that doesn't mean I've ever built anything that's perfect. But big differences will be in terms of how the barrels are fit. I do all hand checkering, the way I do frame and slide fits, the intricate machining that's just involved in a frame and slide fit for me, where I'm taking a Colt, welding up the frame rails, recutting all the inside of the slide to get a really precision fit so that I can then have the most optimal, hopefully longest lasting, durable frame and slide fit. Those are all things that really take a tremendous amount of time, and the time is really where the dollars come from.
Well, let me jump in, because you mentioned that it will last. You're not building guns for people to put on the shelf. You're building shooters.
Yes. I mean, my core goal with the guns is absolutely to have the client enjoy them. And honestly, it really does come in any manner that they want them to. There's no doubt in my mind that I built guns for guys who simply want to have them to look at. I mean, I know I've done it, right?
Sure.
And at the same time, I know I have one repeat client who has many of my guns, maybe 6 or 7 at this point, and I know one of his guns he has documented over 100,000 rounds.
And you're a shooter. You're a competitive shooter, and you're an instructor, and you know guns, and you shoot 1911. So this is not a case of you just building pretty stuff.
No, I mean, I think everything I do comes from what you just said, which is that I started as a shooter. I do shoot competitively. I live with the gun every day. I mean, I'm a guy who still totes around a 5-inch all-steel government model and inside the pants holster every single day. That is my actual carry gun. And then I shoot that carry gun in matches. So, yeah, I mean, for me, I'm the luckiest guy in the world in that I get to build this thing that I'm ultra passionate about.
Hey, Jason, I got to hit my break here. Let me do this. I want to take a quick break and come back. I want to ask you the the really important question, and the one that everybody asks, and everybody under like 35 is like rolling their eyes right now as we're talking. And the question is going to be, why the 1911? We're talking with Jason Burton from Heirloom Precision. Check it out, heirloomprecision.com. I'm Tom Gresham. We'll be right back. Okay, this is fun. Last hour, we had as our guest, Jack Carr, talk about his new book, In the Blood, and right in the very first part of it, the protagonists are talking about using a Jason Burton Heirloom Precision 1911, and now we get to have Jason Burton from Heirloom Precision on talking about that. By the way, Jason, he said that you guys are on the initial stages of working on a project together. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're cooking up something. Probably going to be a 38 Super, I think, is what he wanted. So yeah, we're cooking up something. Yep.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you in 1911s, 9 versus 45 versus what caliber is your favorite?
Always going to be 45 for me. I mean, it's the one I cut my teeth on. It's the granddaddy kind of thing, and
sure.
It's the old reliable. I think on a long enough timeline, and I've said this many times to people, I think that the gun excels in a 5-inch all-steel format, shooting a 230 grain ball projectile. So that's a 45 ACP, obviously. Doesn't mean they can't work in other calibers, but I still shoot CDP division and in IDPA, which is a 5-inch 45 ACP government model, right? Because I love everything about that. It's the thing I'm the most passionate about, for sure.
Well, okay, so the question clearly is, you're specializing in making really high-end, custom-made, and I do mean custom-made 1911 pistols. You carry one. I carry one often. But for those who don't really understand, and I'm sure you get the question, when you decide to specialize on something, obviously the 1911 allows for a lot of customization, but why is there's still all this interest and passion for the 1911 platform?
I think that the gun offers a balance of usability, of shootability, of ergonomics, and I don't know if we want to call it lore or not, but there's a historical significance to the gun that simply draws people to it. And that sets aside the other things that could be, it's beauty, although some people think it's ugly, but I think it when you see what the gun can do in the hands of a capable shooter, and when if you blindfold somebody and have them pick up the guns and just shoot the guns, right? Whatever the guns are, pick a smattering of different types of guns. Everyone always remarks about certain attributes that the 1911 has, and first and foremost is always the trigger.
The trigger.
And I think, everybody loves a single action trigger, and as well as I do that those triggers can be tuned to be not only extremely light, you can make the gun kind of do anything you want. So if you're into different types of shooting disciplines, if you want to go shoot bullseye or USPSA or IDPA, or if you're just into casual shooting, the 1911 can adapt itself to whatever that shooting sport might be or whatever the task for the gun might be. And I think that there's something that as shooters become more seasoned, I think that people eventually become attracted to it because in part of its reputation, but also because they know that when they pick the gun up and they fire off that first round, there's a special kind of spark going on there that is that combination of ergonomics and just what the gun is able to do in the hands of a capable shooter. And I think that keeps people coming back to it over and over again.
No, I mean, when I have a good 1911 in my hands, I feel I think you have to call it confidence. I am absolutely confident that there's no worries hitting a man-sized target at 50 yards. I'm pretty sure I could do the same thing at 100 yards with iron sights with a good 1911. And there aren't a lot of pistols I can say that about.
Yeah, I agree. And, the 1911's capacity for not only the ergonomic benefits of just picking it up and it feeling sort of natural in your hand, but also the capacity for extreme accuracy in the guns and reliability. I know that oftentimes people think of those things as opposing forces, right? Like, well, how can you make it tight and make it really accurate and also still be reliable? But the machine, when you look at it and you really get into how it works, it's actually a really simple machine. I mean, the gun just is basically going in a straight line every time it goes off.
Sure, just sliding back and forth. Yeah.
That's it. And, when they are built to spec and you pay attention to certain very important dimensions inside the gun with regards to the gun's timing and like how the extractor picks up the round as it feeds, how the extractor controls the round as it links down, all of that stuff that's going on inside the gun. The guns are actually pretty infallible. And I know that I'm sure there's somebody listening now that had a 1911 and it didn't work. I get that because we've sort of swapped brands on everything so much inside this industry, and there's been so many people that have made it. Eventually, there's going to be a bad one made. But I can speak from not only my own personal experience, but the guys I shoot with. Like our buddy Rob Latham, right? Like Rob and I are good friends. We shoot together all the time. His guns work and work and work and work and work, and they're a testament. And I think what he's been able to also do with the gun from a competitive career standpoint is a testament to how good the gun can perform.
Now, is it true that you have added Rob Latham as your belt sander in your shop?
Yeah. I let him come in and do all the intricate fine work with regards to barrel fits and frame and slide fits, just the little stuff on the gun, right?
This is, as we call him, Rob Ballpeen Latham. It's like, do not let that guy have tools in his hands, especially not any kind of power tool.
No. When he's got something to say about what's going on inside a gun and how a gun should shoot and how a gun should feel, I'm all ears. But as soon as he starts saying things like, let me give that a try, I start thinking it's time for us to go to lunch.
Yeah. Well, people will not even appreciate this. They won't even believe what we're talking about. He can tell you what's going on inside of a gun when he's shooting it because he can feel it.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
I mean, he really can, can't he?
Machine.
He'll say, there's something going on with the link, or there's a this, or there's, and you're going, what? You go, no, and then you look at it and go, that actually turned out to be right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's, talk about an amazing guy in terms of what he's been able to accomplish in his career, but also his base of knowledge that he's gathered over 40 plus years. I mean, people would do well when he talks about shooting or how a gun should work. People need to listen because he really knows his stuff.
All right, so 1911, you're building these incredible guns. People are actually using them for defense. They're carrying them every day. They're not, there's some wall hangers in there, but people shoot them and carry them. Here's a question for you. You mentioned 100,000 rounds through one of them. Jim was asking me, the producer, during the break, he said, well, do you wear out the barrel? And I said, you shoot out rifle barrels, but I don't know if you actually shoot out a pistol barrel, do you?
Not this was a 45 ACP gun. And in that, really no, because, even a 230 grain ball round trundling along at 850 feet per second, there's not a lot of pressure.
No.
And I'm sure you're going to start getting some erosion in the lead of the chamber, but in terms of it losing its potential for practical accuracy, and again, everyone's definition of practical accuracy is different, but if you look at IDPA, practical accuracy is 4 inches at 25 yards. I mean, that's the hardest shot you're ever going to make, right? So the guns will well shoot into that. And it's interesting, that story too, because the client called me because he realized that the frame was cracked on his gun. And I asked him, I said, oh, well, man, yeah, I might be able to fix it. And I said, well, how many rounds do you think you have through it? Well, he knew his round count because he had reloaded his ammo. And he knew how many primers he had purchased for it. And so he wasn't loading like 195 power factor ammo. He said he was probably loading 175 power factor. So he's still making major, but it's not quite a 230 at 850 feet per second.
And I'm just about out of time, Jason. So go ahead.
Yep. But nothing else in the gun had broken is the point. And I think that's one of the reasons, going back to why people are still so attracted to the gun, is that when done right, they're durable.
There you go. Jason, thank you so much. Jason Burton from Heirloom Precision. If people want to take a look at it, they can see all your work there at heirloomprecision.com. Always a pleasure. I look forward to getting together with you, doing some more videos, and shooting with you sometime.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. You take care. The guy who can build them, he can also shoot them. That's a good combination. $15,000 for a 1911. Are you in on that one?